Hey friend, here's your quick heads up to this longer podcast. I want you to be the most unselfish, selfish person you could be. And if you're not doing this, you should. And if you're not doing this, you are actually very, very selfish. Yeah, it's a poke in the eye. But come and have a listen to see what I really mean, okay? Have fun after this. Are you fed up of having low self-esteem? Are you fed up of feeling anxious, fearful? Well, you're in the right place, because this is the Personal Development Unplugged podcast. And I'm here, Paul Cloughie to you, to break down the complicated things and find processes, simple processes to let go of that anxiety, let go of that fear, and let go of that low self-esteem, and create in you a supreme inner confidence. Well, supreme in that it's you, and you become the real you, the old you, and just live a life that is so pleasant to live, that you can have fun in and create the life that you desire for yourself. If that's important to you, or something you'd like to explore with me, come on this adventure of the personal development unplugged kind. Anyway, hope that does interest you. And if it does, have a listen.
Hello, and I'm here by duty and honour of my country to warn you you're entering into the personal space of Personal Development Unplugged, and it may seriously, yes, seriously, make your life so much better. Thank you.
Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Cloughie. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey friend, my friend, how are you? Welcome to the longer podcast, Personal Development Unplugged with me, Paul. You had the intro, all that stuff. And before, normally I give you my thoughts about what I've talked about at the end. That's what I've talked about. But I want to give you a couple of things before. You see, I had a meta view on this one, because normally I write my notes and then I think about what I've said maybe. And do I believe in what I've just said? And to me, it's a win-win, what I'm going to be talking about. A win-win for life. That's a big one, isn't it? A win-win for life. And a win-win for life really means you win, they win. Everyone wins. And one of the things I want to sort of tell you covertly, well, I want to tell you about it now. So covertly, I want you to just stop it and start this. And I want you to feel covertly that this is really okay. This is the right thing to do. And covertly, I want to tell you get you to feel that it's so important that only you can do it. No one else, only you can do it. So what am I talking about? Let's go back to the beginning, Paul. Here's the thing. Don't you dislike selfish people? Yeah? I don't like selfish people. But, and there's a but, it depends on your definition, you see. So I see a lot of selfish people in my clinic room, and I have to talk to them about how they really are being so selfish. You see, it depends on your definition, as I said. You see, I, in the past, was so selfish. But in my definition, and I'm not going to tell you that. Well, I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet. You're going to get that as I talk. But I was so selfish some 20 odd years ago when I learned hypnosis, become a master hypnotist. When I did my NLP practitioner, master prac, trainer's training, timeline therapy, master timeline therapy, all that stuff. That was so selfish of me. You see, yes, I loved it. And it was a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice in a way from me being away from my family, and maybe it was a sacrifice from my family not having me around. But it was only like at weekends and the odd week. But I did a lot of practice and things like that. I really loved it, and in some ways, really selfish. But the selfishness of that, in some ways, I look back at what it produced in me, or for me. My work got better in so many ways. The company I was with, I just helped that grow. I was then very successful, and yeah, I earned good money. There you go. But I also know that I've inspired my children. 2 of them actually have gone through NLP practitioner training, master practitioner training, timeline therapy training, master timeline therapy training, and even trainer's training. And working in this context of therapy and helping personal development and all that stuff. It's inspired them to do it. I didn't push them. They just saw it as something that was good. Obviously, I enjoyed it, and obviously there was an interest there. And I also know that I've saved lives. Okay, you might say, how do you know? Well, I've helped people stop smoking. That saves lives. I know I've had people who were getting close to suicide. And in fact, I had to get a letter from one person, from their doctors, because they'd already tried to commit suicide. And they're fine. I've helped people with depression. And where does that lead? All that stuff. Saved. If it hasn't saved their lives from leaving this mortal world, it's changed their lives. But it was for me as well. And it still is for me. I'm still learning. When I do this, I'm learning. When I'm reading, I'm learning. When I'm listening, I'm learning. I'm still curious of how to do things better in the therapeutic world of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, but also for me, different things. And why is that? Because I believe it makes a better me. I believe you can inspire others. I know I have done in my trainer's training, or when I've been doing my trainings, but also I know I save a few more lives. You know, I like to joke to my friends, because they'll just say to me when we go out for a drink, hey, have you saved any lives today, Paul? It's a joke, but it's true. But it depends on your definition of selfish. So, yes, I did something for me, but hey, a lot of people got the benefit of it, didn't they? And I got to enjoy it. And it took a long time. Years and years and years. And I'm still practicing to make permanent, learning more, stretching more. So let's talk about definition of selfishness, being selfish. And if this is one maybe you would come to your mind first, I had to look on the old Google definitions, and I found this one. And it's like an action that's lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's personal profit and pleasure. And that's the thing I think is where I think selfishness lies. When people are taking action, lacking consideration for others, and chiefly concerned about their personal profit and pleasure. Because I know when, as I say, go back to my selfishness, it wasn't just for me. There was others involved. And my personal profit made my family secure. And it helped other people, because when that business got more successful, we employed more people. Everyone else benefited. So isn't it weird, isn't it? You can be sort of selfish. And this is where we're going to go, because I want you to be selfish, but in the right way. Not having any consideration for others and personal profit. No, that's not the definition I want to use. You see, when you and I do something for ourselves, I think that's what springs to mind, isn't it? You know, we get that feeling of guilt. Or maybe that thought, who am I to do this? For me. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve this. Who am I? Who am I to even think about doing it? I'm guilty. I feel guilty that doing something for me. But you see, that doesn't come from selfishness in that definition, because I know when you or I do something in this personal development work, to do work on ourselves and take time out to do work on ourselves, to improve ourselves, to develop ourselves. That's just not, doesn't have any, that has consideration for others. I know it does, because you wouldn't be here listening to me if you didn't consider the other people in your life and little old planet Earth. And I know it's not just for your personal profit, because you're spending a lot of time on this, and you're probably buying books and you're practicing. You see, I think when we get to think of that bit where we get a little bit guilty, and that's a natural thing, because a lot of us don't like to work on ourselves with the exclusion. Sometimes we have to take ourselves away, don't we, and do this work. And sometimes people don't understand it. It's like the hero's journey. You go off on your hero's journey, and you're going off on your hero's journey can be just this thing. For me, it was learning the NLP, the hypnosis. But for you, it could be as you read and you stretch yourself and you do some of the processes here and things like that, and you really try to improve yourself, you're going to come across those hurdles, those objections maybe, things that come in your way. You get over them, you learn and stretch yourself, but then you have to come back to the family. And sometimes that can be quite hard, because maybe they're not on the same level of understanding as you, maybe not like vibrating at the same frequency, but they get to be around you. And then we're going to go over that in a minute. I'm going to hold back on that. You see, I don't think when we get that feeling of guilt and we say, who am I? Who am I to do this? Just for me. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve this. We're not seeing the bigger picture. Or it's not seeing the bigger picture. We're not seeing the real picture. And the real picture for me is the outcome if we did get it. If we did work on ourselves, what would the outcome be? And that outcome would be, I believe, for you to be the best person you could ever be. And you can always get better, but at that moment in time, you'd be striving to be the best person. And if you're striving to be the best person you can be, you're aligned, you're singing from your true voice, you're showing up and doing all that stuff, you're probably succeeding. Well, you are. Just by doing it, you're succeeding in my books. But you'll be a happier person. And because you're a happier person, people around you, well, they get to be around you. But we'll go into that in a minute. You see, when you think of definitions like personal development, it's personal. Personal development. Self-development. Development of the self. Learning to love myself. I know that's a bit soppy. Soppy. But it is learning to love myself, me. Is that selfish? To learn to love yourself? And sometimes we stop doing that because we go back to that feeling of guilty. And you see, sometimes we just don't start it. And I think that's when you start to become, when you stop working on yourselves, that's when you become selfish. What? How can I be selfish working on myself is one of the things I told you to get there. You see, when you don't do things for yourself which benefit others and is not chiefly concerned about your personal profit and pleasure, but it's a pleasure for you and others, when you stop doing that, people suffer. The people you love suffer in a way. The people around you suffer in a way because they love you and they want to be around you when you're feeling your best. And if you're not feeling your best, you're denying them being around you when you're feeling at your best. And if you're denying that, then that pleasure of being with you, the person they love, the person they respect, well, to me, that's pretty selfish. So it now becomes unselfish, I believe, to work on yourself, to be the best you, to create that wonderful change you want to see in others. You see, think about it. Who suffers when you don't do things for yourself? Self-maintenance. Let's call it self-maintenance. Who suffers when you're not looking after yourself and you're giving everything to others? Who suffers then? Well, I think they do. They do because, as I say, you're giving everything to them, but you're not aligned to it maybe because you're not coming from that true place you could be if you did a little bit of work on yourself. Personal development, self-improvement, being the better you, the best you, striving to be who you really should be on this world, not should be, really are in this world. So they suffer, and so do you. Because you're suffering because they're not seeing the best you, you're not doing the best you, and you feel guilty about doing any work on yourself, and that's where you should be so selfish in working on yourself. It makes such a difference. If you think about this might be when you're totally unselfish. You're totally unselfish because you do work on yourself, because you've notice you get anxiety or you get anxious sometimes. So you work on letting go of that anxiety. It takes time. It takes a little bit of effort. It takes the will to do whatever it takes, but you do it. And that anxiety disappears. What type of person are you? Imagine a world that you live in that you don't get as anxious and have that anxiety at the levels you do. We always get a little bit anxious about something, but at the levels you've been having it. When that disappears, how good life will be. Or how good will life be? What about when you don't worry constantly and have that stuff going on in your head in loops and seeing those endless pictures of how bad it could be? And worse than that, when that disappears because you work on yourself to let go of that worry, aren't you a better person? Aren't you a nicer person to be around? Absolutely. What about when you work on yourself, when you get rid of anxiety, you get rid of that worry? Maybe you get rid of things like depression, OCD, anything you think of that is causing you something negative, a negative behavior, negative limiting belief, negative emotion. When you get rid of that, you improve your health, don't you? You improve your health. And then you begin to eat healthy. You work out, you do walking, but you walk in a different way and you feel better for it. You actually, on a physical level, I guess, you're firing off all those endorphins or whatever it is, and you're firing synaptic gaps of pleasure. And people get to be with you when you're firing off those synaptic gaps of pleasure. All because you're working on yourself. Because who wants to be around you when you're anxious, when you're worried, when your health isn't so good as it should be? I don't want to be around you. Of course I do, because I want to help you, but you know what I mean. And you see, when you do stuff like that and you eliminate anxiety, fear, worry, guilt, jealousy, depression, sadness, you can go on forever. You fill in the blank. You become a happier person. You become a calmer person. You become a more excited, more passionate person, who you really are. And that's who I'd like to be around. I want to be around you when you're doing that. So I want to be around you as we let go of all that stuff so you can work on yourself in such an unselfish way that everyone gets the benefit of it. And then so do you, because you get the benefit of being around them when they're happy, which is just what you've been denying them. And then everyone gets to be around you when you're good, you're satisfied, calm, passionate, excited, cure, everything like that. And what does that do when you're like that? You have oodles, bucketfuls of energy, because it doesn't take any energy to be happy, to be calm, to be excited, to be passionate, to be curious. It takes a lot of energy to keep worrying. It takes a lot of energy to keep being anxious. I talk to my clients when they have that and say, it's tiring doing all this work, isn't it? Oh, it is, Paul. So think of a time when you were really just the way you want to be. Just imagine, there's a time in your life in the past when you were just happy to be in the moment. How tiring was that? And they go, well, of course, I could do that all day. And that's it. All that energy is going in the right way. And I think when you get that type of energy, you spread love. Because again, you're loving who you are. And when you're loving who you are, people just get it. I mean, when you think about it, here's the thing. There's that wonderful old metaphor that every trainer uses. I want to use it too. When you're on an aeroplane, you get, and the emergency exits are at the front, at the side, at the back. And here's your thing you put over your head in case you go in the water with a whistle, just in case in the middle of the Atlantic you need a whistle. But they also say, if the cabin runs out of air, a mask will drop down. Put it on yourself first before dealing with your children and making sure they're safe. Because you need to make yourself safe first. Because if you don't, you can't help them. I mean, here's another one. That's one metaphor. And it works, doesn't it? Because you have to look after yourself then to look after your children. Because you wouldn't do anything other than that, would you? Children, your wife, your partner, your husband, whatever, you would do that. You see, the other thing, if you do have a best friend outside of your internal best friend, or you have children, would you ever encourage them to hold on to anxiety, worry, guilt, jealousy, depression, sadness, all of that stuff, all that worry? Would you, actually deter them from working on themselves to be a happier person? No, you'd encourage them, wouldn't you? You'd encourage them with every fibre of your being. That's it, because that's what you would do for your best friend. Well, hey, you've got to put your mask on to enable you to encourage them to do that, to show them, to be the example of what can be done, to be the example of the work in progress that you're doing, so they see the physical changes. I often ask my clients, because I say, I know you're going to see and realize some changes, but when you have made those changes, sometimes you don't notice it, and that new norm becomes your norm. And then the old norm that used to have the worry, the anxiety, the guilt, all that stuff has disappeared. So you don't realize that you've changed so much. It's only when you ask others who are close to you, say, without saying, I'll be working on depression or whatever, just say, have you noticed anything different about me? And they go, oh, yeah, such a pleasure to be around now. You're more communicative. You're with us more. Yet they've been working on themselves, and now they're with them more. And it's that verification, if that's the word, validation of the changes. So you have to do this, work on yourself, and be so unselfish to do that, and take all the time you need to do it. But see, first of all, you have to agree to this intellectually, I guess, because I know, you may have that little thing where you go, well, yeah, but I'm still guilty of even thinking about it. Well, intellectually, you have to agree that what I've just said is actually spot on, Cloughie. You are right on the mark. You've knocked it out of the park. Intellectually, I know you're correct. Okay, so now intellectually we know that. And we know if we did see the big picture, how different it would be. The whole unconscious mind starts to get it now, because if it sees how it's going to be, it notices how safe you feel in that big picture, getting the results. It starts looking and comparing, how do I feel now with this worry, this anxiety, this fear, this anger, all these negatives? How safe am I making them feel? And you're not. So your unconscious mind, your best friend, can then start to weigh up the differences and say, well, maybe I need to go that way. And then you just need to come back to the thing I come back to every blooming time, and I need to remind myself, I need to set that intention then. I'm going to do this. So set your intention is what you want to achieve or have achieved. Have achieved be, whatever that is. So what is that big picture? Well, I want to be, instead of free from anxiety, which is a sort of start, but it's not, because when you say I'm free from anxiety, free from worry, free from fear, free from guilt, you still think about those things first. It's like we said before, don't think of a blue tree. Damn, that blue tree's back again. But set your intention. I want to be calm. I want to be passionate. I want to be just at peace. I want to be happy. I want to be connected. I want to be passionate. I want to be excitable. I want to be curious. All those wonderful positive things. And you don't have to just be the one. I want a recipe of all of that, if that was me. So set your intention. My goal is to feel that way. And then we make a plan. And the plan is how we're going to work on ourselves. Are we going to do it in baby steps? One small thing at a time. Some people don't like the word baby steps. But look at babies. They stumble around a little bit on those first steps. They're a bit unstable. But within days, they're running and skipping and doing it. And they fall over and they get up again and they carry on again. They bump their heads, but they don't care. They carry on. But we're going to just plan one thing at a time. And as long as that one thing that we do at a time, that baby step is achievable, there's no overwhelm. But you know that it's going to give you the feeling of the wish fulfilled, which is that big picture feeling. We're on the right track. And you see, you can all just remember, this is for everyone else. Whilst I'm loving myself. And I'm doing this. You see, and then we get to the boring bit. You have to plan this out. Remember Carl Newport. You have to schedule it, time block them. So plan adequate time. And the thing is, when you do that, share what makes you happy. Share your achievements. That's one way to set the example, but it doesn't matter about, people will get it anyway. But as you make that progress, review it, look at it, get proud of yourself, love yourself for doing this, and share what makes you happy. And people will get it. So start small in time. Start small in steps. It's not a rush. You'll speed up. It happens all the time. Once we start making that little inroad, it's a little bit like you just start pushing something downhill a little bit. Because before you were pushing the bloody thing uphill and it was getting bigger and heavier, and the hill was getting steeper and the thing was getting... But now you're just starting to roll this on there's a slight descent. And it gets a little bit hard, but it gets a bit easier. And then it gets easier than that. And then the momentum comes and the motivation comes and all the good results come. And it feels so light because the energy is there. And then notice how you feel as you do this. Not at the very end. Not at the end. Bit by bit. So maybe at the end of the day, maybe if you've planned something today, review it in the evening. Review at the end of the week. Review at the end of the month. Because when you notice how far you've come, and you'll be amazed, we do tend to overstretch ourselves at the beginning. We think we can do more in the short term, but we always underestimate what we can do in the long term. So you start small, you get that motivation, the speed starts to accelerate lovely and gently. So you're really in control. And then when you look back, you go, shit, I've done all of this, me. Then you become empowered. We haven't got to the final goal yet, because, by the way, you'll never get there, because you're always going to be constant, never improvement, never-ending improvement, constant and never-ending improvement. Always be that one little bit better. And then you can tell others how you feel. And they'll say, yeah, we know. We can see it. And then you know you're the example. You're the example of a life well lived. You're setting that example. Isn't that awesome? All from being unselfish, by working on yourself and getting the results that just make everyone happy. And you'll probably, if it's about your career, you'll probably get a bit more money too. But you'll get repaid, as it were, in the emotional repayment from those other people, the love from them, the kindness you'll get, because you'll be giving kindness out. All of that. And as I said, just share it with others. Talking of sharing, we always get there, don't we? It'll be lovely. I know you've shared your time with me, and that's absolutely awesome. I am so grateful for the time you spend with me. Listen to me prattle on, doing my stuff in my head outside, because this is for me too, by the way. Starts with me, and then we expand it. But sharing. What would happen if you just shared what you learned here? Because and the other thing, by the way, is don't just learn this intellectually. It's a doing. You have to understand it and then do it, and then see the progress and keep doing it and doing it and let that momentum. So it's all about doing and being. But the thing is, when you tell people what you're doing, you get to know it better. So it's a lovely way to expand your knowledge, is by sharing verbally what you're doing and how you're doing it, what you've learned, because you get to learn it deeper. But when they say, well, where did you get this from? You can say, well, I got it from Cloughie, personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. And it's not that, is it? It's Personal Development Unplugged, the podcast. You can get it on any podcast app of choice. I'm not everywhere with it. Or you could, if you're listening to it on your podcast app of choice, you'll notice there's a share button of some kind, or a plus button, or send button. There's something that you can just share it with. Maybe you can share it with a few people. Have a little group, share it with 2 or 3 people, and then next time maybe share it with a different few people. Maybe make some notes about this as well. Just some bullet points to inspire you, so it doesn't go in one ear and out the other. Might want to listen to this again, fast forward to the last 20 minutes and just go through that, get these steps. So much fun to have, so much love to have, so much success for everyone, for you to experience. And also the calmness, the excitement, the happiness, the peace, all that stuff. So if you would share that, or this episode and the podcast, I'd be really, really grateful, just as I'm about your time, as I said. So until the next time, I'm going to look forward to do some more work with you and me. And also remember, I don't like to do too many calls to action, but just as a reminder, there is some free hypnosis. If you're new to this, free hypnosis, paulcloughonline.com/podcast. And then you've got 50 plus hypnosis tracks that you can really start to use to work on yourself. That's why I want to put it in here. That's not a call to action, it's just information. Call to action, as they say, they love it in podcast land apparently. Have a call to action, and this is my call to action, share it. But also, use those tracks. I'll do a few more hypnosis tracks as well. Got a couple in my mind. I'll let you know how they come, or how they are, and when they're out. And you'll get it on either a newsletter, or I'll actually do it on here. Anyway, have more fun that you can stand being the most unselfish you. And be the best you can be. Sing from your real voice. Show up being the most aligned, congruent human being that's you. Okay? Time to fly, my friends. Have fun.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Cloughie. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.